Fisheye lenses came down to us by studying the eye of the fish itself. This was done by Mr. Robert Wood. Yes, you got me right, not Robin Hood. Later patented to Nikon by a German scientific team. Then these lenses were used to picture the stars and the origins of rock and roll as well. In the end, the fisheye lenses came to the masses using the hip-hop culture trail. That's why they are much more affordable today compared to once upon a time. Welcome to a new S-Lab video. In the following video I'm going to explain you everything you need to know about these two very interesting wide-angle lenses produced by 7Artisans. There will be a summary at the end, and besides that you can access the topics of your most interest directly using the time warp links. We are going to touch the technical data, build quality, focusing, handling, and of course the relevant optical properties. At first, we are going to have a look at the image angle. These four pictures illustrate how extreme the difference between 4 and 7.5mm is, both in APS-C and full frame as well. During this following sequence, both lenses are designed to be APS-C lenses, but in many cases, and not only for artistic reasons, it can also be useful to check out the full frame potential of any APS-C lens as well. And besides that, due to their very compact measures, they look quite interesting both on APS-C and full frame, at least according to my taste. In classic photo frame 3x2, we do profit of the full circle of this 4mm lens in full frame mode, of course, but also in APS-C equivalent. Resolution-wise, it does not really make any sense, except we want to create an artistic zoom towards the subject like so. In this case, the extra headroom of a full sensor can be handy because no additional post-production is needed. Using the 7.5mm, we are being confronted with a different situation, since its framing is only beautiful in the originally intended crop mode of APS-C. Or maybe, really? Isn't there a certain beauty to this extraordinary framework as well? Lucky are those ones who are not limited to APS-C. Sometimes I like to play around with frames, so let's check how these lenses perform in 4K 16:9 video mode. Handling problems can be solved in many ways. Use your hands wisely by holding the camera from the back. In case your finger at the trigger is part of the image, use the camera's self-timer. Use any kind of monopod to fix your camera in space. Use an internal trigger. This might be an app connected to your camera, a remote trigger using USB, a remote trigger connected via Bluetooth, or just any type of gimbal that supports the dialogue with your camera via wire or remote wireless connection as well. An in-body image stabilization shall be deactivated in order to avoid the image jumping around. In best case, of course, use a gimbal to stabilize your footage. Small disclaimer, of course, I would be happy about your subscription. Please donate this video a like if you like it. And by the way, I'm recording this speech with an exciting 32-bit machine about which soon on this channel a review is going to be released. Now for the math of those two lenses. The 7Artisans 4mm lens reproduces an incredible 6mm full-frame equivalent at APS-C, which deserves the name Super Fisheye, I'd suggest, since just fisheye is simply not enough to describe this context. The image angle exceeds 180 degrees, as we have already seen in the examples where parts of my fingers and parts of the camera itself become part of the image, even though all of them being located behind the front end of the lens. This is like as if we have been able to see what's behind us, even though gazing forwards into space. In my scale, illustrating different angles of view resulting by various focal length, this 4mm lens of course finds itself at the very bottom. Being a fully manual lens, it offers a smooth focusing experience marked with a minimal focal distance of 0.085 meters up to infinity, but the marks of focal distances are far from precise. It is definitely not possible to trust these numbers which are engraved on the lens. Only by using the viewfinder of your camera in combination with the digital focus magnifier, which is available on most of the contemporary Sony E-mount cameras, you are going to produce reliable results. This means clearly focusing with the 4mm needs experience and patience both ends. With my copy of this lens, infinity is being focused correct only as long as the markings on the lens indicate somewhere between 0.11 and 0.2 meters. This is way off from what to be expected, so make sure to only trust the focusing after you double-checked using focus magnification. The aperture ring is equipped with an additional handle sticking out for easy handling and comfortably smooth adjustments. This is nice and interesting, but also carries the risk of accidentally changing the values when in fact not intended. This holds true especially since the aperture ring does not provide any clicks whatsoever. It reaches from a remarkable fast aperture of 2.8, even though the optics are so small and lightweight with this fisheye lens, up to aperture 16. The topic of the lens caps is something which we will come to in a minute, but to round up this 4mm lens, besides its very unusual architecture with the glass sticking out of the body, it is quite small. It fits easily into your palm and provides a decent weight of 201 grams. All in all, it seems to be built like a tank, if there was not this little bit of aftertaste with these lens caps, which we will come to in a minute. The 7.5mm lens, on the other hand, contains very decent and more grayish markings instead of the whitish markings of its uneven twin, but these markings seem to be located way more precise compared to its 4mm brother or sister, whichever way you may like to describe it. That at least holds true for my copy of this 7.5mm lens. It means that the point where infinity nails seems to be near where the infinity markings are. That's indeed an advantage, but I would still prefer to only trust the results of a proper balanced focus magnification as well. Minimal focus distance is marked to be at 0.12 meters. I didn't measure it up to the millimeter. Both the focus and aperture ring turn smoothly, but contain no clicks as well. This is common for almost all focus rings, of course, but I'm aware that some other 7Artisans optics also provide the option to choose between clicking and non-clicking aperture. Like the 4mm lens, this 7.5mm lens offers apertures starting at 2.8, and it allows another step up over 16mm aperture up to 22mm. I have no explanation why the aperture ring of the 7.5mm rotates into the opposite direction compared to its 4mm friend. Such lens design decisions seem to be a little counterintuitive to me. Even though also the glass of the 7.5mm sticks out a little of its body, it makes me worry less, since here we are being confronted with a non-removable lens tray in a similar build like a tank style to hopefully protect the lens from possible damage. If there was not this problem with the lens caps, which we will come to right now. 7Artisans decided to provide lens caps, which at first glance seem to be pretty useful and stable as all the rest of the affordable optics, but after a little while of usage they unfold to be the funniest lens caps I ever encountered in my life. No click or screw mechanism to connect them to the lens bodies, no wires also to prevent them from slipping away or falling unintentionally. They barely hold their position by a design concept which seems to be a mixture of cohesion and pumping in and out some air. It requires no more than pointing your camera towards the floor or simply reviewing the light last images you shot or checking some settings for the next, and these lens caps are going to surprise you by simply falling on the ground and rolling away, and therefore interfering very loud and sudden with the artistic process, especially inside reflective rooms as well. Even when attached and placed inside a bag, the cap of the 4mm lens is not going to hold position very well. My suggestion as a workaround when working with these lenses would be to protect them inside a soft cloth thick enough to prevent any damage, instead of using the useless original lens caps which won't fulfill their purpose anyway. Besides that, both lenses, for their optical qualities alone, are extremely interesting to work with, and they definitely encourage you to rethink photography and videography as well. However, they are rather unsuitable for fast and wildly running snapshot hunters. They demand time so that you can prepare the pictures well, especially regarding the right focus and aperture settings. In the end, I like them both very much for not being perfect. Nowadays, imperfection seems to become the more interesting companion when longing to catch the quality of a unique moment and trying to transform it into a magical image. With my already very wide 12mm Samyang lens, for example, which equals to 18mm in full frame, I would not have been able to touch the edges of the image in such an interesting way as I was able with the 7Artisans 7.5mm, and the same shot using the 4mm fisheye lens then transformed the whole scenery into a mystical scene. It is precisely this dancing point where both lenses begin to shine, when photography in sense of pure documentation ends and the language of art instead begins to pick up its pace.